Welcome. This video is going to focus on using Qt Creator to build and run programs for 161. So if you haven't already, you need to download Qt Creator. If you have a Mac or Linux, you can find the appropriate installers here. I've heard that you're better off for Linux using the larger one instead of the online installer. For Windows, you need to make sure you get this version, the one that says Windows 32-bit MinGW. It's rather large, but this is the one that you absolutely have to have. So while you're downloading, or once you've downloaded, you also want to grab the Qt Creator setup instructions, and they walk through what you need to do to install it. Kind of the key step is to make sure that as you're installing it, when it asks you to select components, that you crack open tools and you tell it to install MinGW. MinGW is the collection of tools that actually is going to build your program, the compiler. Qt Creator itself is just a text editor. It's just going to help us type the C++ code. There's also instructions in here for if you have a Mac or Linux, some special steps you need. Then there are instructions for getting the templates set up that I want you to have. And so you can download that either from the link in the setup instructions or from this settings folder. And when you download it, it's this zip file. And inside that is this folder Qt project. And so you'd want to extract that somewhere. And what's in there is an ini file and a folder called Qt Creator, which has some project templates. And so what we want to do with that is make sure it ends up in a folder that looks like this: C, users, your name, app data, roaming. And I've already got it installed in here. And there's the Qt project folder. Basically, you just want to drag it into this roaming folder and make sure it ends up there. That's all in the setup instructions. Kind of walks you through exactly where you need to put that. If you're on a Mac or Linux, it goes in a slightly different place. But that will have the project templates that I want you to have. So if you've got all that done, you can then fire up Qt Creator. And so I'm going to do that. And here it is. Alright, so usually when you open Qt Creator, what you're going to want to do is make a new project for every assignment or anytime you just want to test out some code. So new file or project. I want this under Chemeketa Projects, Chemeketa Basic Project. If you don't see this, then you didn't get that Qt project folder installed in the right place, and you need to go back and do that. So close Qt Creator, go do that, and try again until you see this. So I choose that. It asks me to pick a location. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the desktop, and I'm going to call this sample. The kits are basically a package of tools and instructions that Qt Creator is going to use to build your code. You shouldn't have to mess with this if you don't see anything here, or you get some error message on this page. Then you didn't get Qt Creator itself installed correctly, and you need to go back and do that. Maybe you downloaded the wrong version of it or something like that. The next tab or step, the details. These are some settings that I've got set up so that your code behaves the way I want it to. It follows the strict C++ standards. It uses the most modern version of the language, and it gives you lots of warnings about things that you might be doing wrong that otherwise it might not. The last checkbox, so those first three, you shouldn't touch unless I specifically tell you to turn them off. The last one you can optionally turn on. These things that it warns you about, you'll learn some of them are actually pretty dangerous. Usually if you're getting warnings in your code, it probably means you have some errors. And turning this last one on will cause all the warnings to be errors which actually prevent your program from running until you go address them. Warnings you're free to ignore at your own peril. So if you want to avoid making silly mistakes and wasting time, you can turn this on. Sometimes it can be a little bit annoying because there are warnings that you may want to ignore temporarily. But if you get used to developing with this one on, I'm just about guaranteed that over time it's probably going to save you a lot of headaches, especially as you're learning how to program C++. But that one's optional. The last tab, the summary tab, you don't have to worry about the version control for now. It shows us that it's going to create this folder called sample and put these two files, main.cpp and sample.pro, in it. Alright, so it's created my project. Up here I can see the project that I'm working with and the two files, the .pro file and the .cpp file. Down here it shows me what files I have open. So right now I'm looking at main.cpp at this file. If I want, I can open the .pro file, and these are just basically a bunch of options for the compiler, for the tool that's going to build our program. So we don't want to mess with these until we know what we're doing. So I'm going to close this file. And usually we just want to edit the main.cpp. If we go out and look, here's our project folder, main.cpp, sample.pro, and this other .user file, which really just stores a bunch of things about like what windows I have open, where they are, stuff that we don't actually need. So if you ever have a project that's kind of broken and not working right, one thing you can do is delete every file except for the .pro and the .cpp file. And so you can get rid of the .user and anything else in here. And the next time you open that project, it'll kind of restore everything and rebuild what it needs to. So let's go ahead and build this for the first time. So the build button, or Control B, or just build project. And I can see that's working on it. And it looks like it finished successfully. Back in my folder, I can see there's a bunch of new files now. And these don't show up in the Qt Creator because normally we don't mess with these by hand. But these make files are what are used to build our program. The debug folder now has our program, sample.exe. It probably won't run if you double click that. I've got it set up so it will successfully run. You may just get an error message, and we'll learn how to deal with that later. For now, if you want to run your program, you do it through Qt Creator. Either the run button, or you just go Control R or choose run. And it runs our program. This program just says hello world and then exits, and so that's what's happened. If I want to modify the program, I can do hello class, and then I'm going to go ahead and run it again. And you can see that it's shown me the new version. The options by default, it's set to build every time you run it. It is possible if you end up doing something to the settings to have it not build every time you run it, but this is probably the way we want it, is every time that we try and run the program, it rebuilds it so we see the most recent version of our code. Now if something goes wrong, so let's say I by accident typed the letter R in there randomly, I go to build the program, I'm going to get some errors. And it tells me that R was not declared in the scope, and I can kind of double click on that to see exactly where it happened. I can hover over this, or I should be able to, and or click on it and see what it matches up with. So it's telling me R is not declared and expected semicolon before return. Usually you want to deal with the first error you see. So R was not declared, so oh, I didn't mean to put that there. Let me get rid of that. And now I'll build, and turns out both errors go away. That second one was just a phantom error. Basically, as soon as the compiler sees something goofy, like I forgot a semicolon, or maybe I forgot that quotation mark, it starts getting confused and all kinds of things start showing up as errors. So usually you just want to try and deal with the first one. So missing terminating quote character. It tells me a little bit about what's going on. That ending quote character is missing. But learning to read these error messages is kind of an art that will take a little while to get used to. So I fix that one error and I try rebuilding it, and it tells me, oh, expected semicolon before return. Well, that's actually not where we need the semicolon. I really want the semicolon up here, and that's where I forgot it, but it just kept reading and finally saw something else and was like, wait, I should have seen a semicolon. So it identifies the error when it gets down here. So I'll put that in and rebuild, and this is what I want to see. All right. So at that point, if I want, I can close that Issues tab and go ahead and run the program again. Now, if you want to load a project you've already got, so let's say I've worked on this, I'm going to go ahead and close Qt Creator, and I want to load up this project. So you should be able to double click on the .pro file, and it will go ahead and load it up. All right. And initially it didn't have main.cpp open. All right, so it came up like this, and I have to go find under sources, find my main file, where the code actually is, if I want to see that. But now I can build it and run it. So let's say I didn't do that for a second. Let's say I'm going to close this project, and let's say I did something like I want to open a file, and I go to the desktop, and I go find that sample folder, and I just open my main.cpp. This is not going to work on its own. All right, you can see I can't build or run this. You can't build or run a standalone file. It's got to be part of a project. So the only way to build or run this is to actually, instead of opening just the main file, is to open the project that it's part of. So I've got to open that pro file, not the main.cpp. And now I've got the options to build and run it. One last thing we should talk about is how to run examples from the book. So you can, from the book website, and I've got a link here, source code for book examples. You can download that, and it'll come as a zip file, and you can unpack it. And you'll get something like this. And it's all the examples from the book. So you're reading something, and you see a code listing that says that this is welcome.cpp. You can go look for that file, and you can open it and get the source code. Right, this is the kind of one of the earliest examples in the book. Now, I've got this open. Welcome.cpp is an open file, but it's not part of this project. Right? The only thing that's part of this project is main.cpp. So if I actually want to run the code from welcome.cpp from this book file, what I usually want to do is take all that code, copy it, and just paste it into my project. Right? And if you don't have a project going, you just go make yourself a new empty project, call it something random, and copy and paste the book code into main.cpp. This is usually how you want to deal with it for now. And now I can build it and run it, and it shows me the new message. Right? But this way I can try out the sample code from the book and all the different examples you'll see in the text. You can grab the source code, paste it into your project, and just try it that way. All right, it is possible to make a project and include existing files, but much easier to just handle it this way. And to remember that even though you see a file open here, like welcome.cpp, that doesn't mean much. Basically, it's just showing me the text that's in there. The only things that really count in terms of running a program are what's in our project. All right, so this is the only thing that's going to run. If you ever have a project that stops working, once again, kind of the way to fix a broken project, well, first solution is just make a new project, and you can open your code, your main.cpp, with any text editor and just copy and paste the text to your new project. So that's always almost the foolproof method. The other method is, once again, delete everything in there except for your main.cpp and your sample.pro. Then if you open the project, it'll say, hey, you've got to configure this, and you just go ahead and say OK, and it will rebuild everything it needs. If you get a broken project or you download an example from me, it doesn't seem to be working right, that's the way to handle it.